And it's a good morning to the Gelding. And Gelding, we're off to Randwick again today, where a lot more group racing is involved.
Good morning, Professor. Good morning, listeners. Yes, we thought we might try Randwick, where it's a heavy 8. And after last week, when we did our tips on a good 4 and ended up being a heavy 8, Professor, bit of danger. So a bit of danger with that. But I thought maybe the Melbourne conditions, Sandown's a very open meeting. I noticed the TAB have got it as a soft 6 at the moment, Professor, but the amount of rain that we got near the Caulfield racetrack would suggest that it will be probably a bit heavier than that, Professor. And if we get rain during the day, which we look like, I think it could be a rather wet day in Melbourne town.
It would appear to be
a bit wintry, Professor.
Well, winter coming early, Gelding, this year.
Well, yeah. So very much a day for sitting back at home with the heater on, watching the races, and then at about 4:30 turning on the football, Professor.
Where your beloved Tigers will be taking the field against the Western Bulldogs, Gelding.
Yes, Professor, we were going, but all of a sudden become fine weather support, I thought. 4:30 at the MCG. Oh, it would be nice and wintry out there today.
Well, 4:30 is not too bad, Gelding. It's the finish at about 7:30, 7:45 that's the worry, especially if you're coming home in the wet.
Yes, Professor. Rather be cooking on the barbecue.
All right, Gelding. Royal, nicely done. Royal Randwick, a 10-race card, Gelding. There's 7 group races, 4 Group 1s, 3 Group 2s. $12 million in stakes money on offer this afternoon. The feature race 8, the Queen Elizabeth Stakes, a weight for age race worth $5 million, Gelding.
Well, Professor, Sydney Racing, no matter what you think, have done a fantastic job with these championships and their autumn carnival. They're getting the best horses racing. They're getting horses coming from England, Japan to run in these races, Professor. So all you can really say is congratulations to the Sydney racing clubs and Racing New South Wales for putting on fantastic racing. As we said, Golden Slipper, I thought it's probably now close to being the best days racing in Australia. These days are, this day's up there with the Victorian Derby Day, and the last day now with the VRC. Why the VRC tampered with the way that the Melbourne Cup Carnival was run is beyond me, but they have trying to do it. But maybe they should have a look at what Sydney's doing and keep their main races where they were and just make them higher quality. But we'll get off the soapbox, Professor, and look at trying to pick some winners for Randwick.
Yeah, the track's a heavy 8 at the moment. The rail's out 4 metres. What are your 2 best bets for Royal Randwick today?
Oh, Professor, again, we're going the Blue Army. A bit disappointing last week, but excuse me, for the weeks before, Professor, they haven't let us down. So I'll be following the Blue Army again. My first tip is race 5, number 1, Cavern. Now, I've been a bit bullish on this horse, Professor, and it's let us down its last 2 starts with a 5th and a 4th, but I'll run this one past you. It's had 7 starts for 3 wins, 2 seconds. The last 2 starts have been its most disappointing in running 5th and 4th, and they were in Group 1 races, Professor. So, this horse is certainly high quality. Godolphin realised the horse probably doesn't stay 1,600, Professor. Loves a wet track. Moved it back, freshened it up, moved it back to 1,200 metres, Professor. So James Cumming doing that with James McDonald on board. My first bet will be race 5, number 1, Cavern. We then go to the main race, Professor, where we've got to have a bet in. And again, the Blue Army, race 8, number 1, Animo. Professor, this horse has been so good to you and me. We've been on it, well, for years now. So I see no reason to jump off. Today may be one of its biggest tests, with due by honour William Haggis, the English horse, coming over, and also Unicorn Lion coming over from Japan, Professor. But I believe Australia's champion, Animo. There was talk that he might have been able to get $3, Animo. Now, for a horse that's won its last 3 starts in Group 1 company in Australia, that'll do me, Professor. I hopped on last night at 280 with a bit of a kick. I noticed you said today it's into 260, but who would have said Animo wouldn't start favourite? But it won't today. So, look, worried about the 2 other horses, but for that, Professor, we're getting a reasonable odds on Animo.
Well, also worried about Cascadian Gelding, who's been very good to us. In fact, brought the Professor's Parlay home a fortnight ago.
Professor, the Blue Army, yes, again, got us down. Cascadian winning the Australian Cup. $12 you can get today, Professor. So, likes of wet, we'll be flying home. But as I said, Professor, you can't have them all. And I think the Blue Army would say that their number 1 seed in this would certainly be Animo. But don't let me put you off backing Cascadian, Professor, if you like it. It could be a good each way bet, Professor.
No, I agree with your sentiments, Gelding. Animo has been a very good horse for GM racing, and also the Professor's Parlay. So a little bit hard to go past that horse, and I agree with your selection, Gelding.
The very, 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 very successful Professor's Parlay.
Yeah.
And you like Professor?
Yeah, I'm going a little bit earlier than you in my first selection, Gelding. Race 2, the South Pacific Classic. It's a 3-year-old listed race over 1,400 metres. In that race, Gelding, I like the favourite, number 9, Cool Jakey, coming out of barrier 8. Had 3 starts for 2 wins and a place, so 67% win rate, 100% place rate. So I like that about it. It won a maiden at Warwick Farm in February on a heavy track, and I think punters need to look at horses with heavy track form today, because although it's a heavy 8 at the moment, it may well get worse during the day. So that start at Warwick Farm I've taken into account. It ran 3rd at Randwick in its last start. It carried 59.5, Gelding. It's only carrying 53 today, so it's up in class but carrying a lot less weight. Tyler Schiller's on the back of the horse, and not often we mention Tyler Schiller in a race, Gelding.
No, a very, very good up-and-coming apprentice up in New South Wales. Professor, they've got 3 apprentices up there, Tyler Schiller, Zach Lloyd, and D Gibbons. They're fighting out the apprenticeship up there. These 3 are going to be very, very good jockeys, Professor. So I do like Tyler Schiller on board for his master, I think, in Mark Newman. And I do notice Cool Jakey, it was double entered for race 2 and race 5, Professor. And Mark Newman scratched it from race 5 against Staff Cabin and has decided to come to the earlier race 2.
Well, yes, and that's something to take into account as well, Gelding, because clearly the trainer fancies his chances in the South Pacific Classic. I think, going up into at race 5, you're starting medal in group racing there, so might be an indicator of what might be to come, and we can only hope, Gelding. I got $3.60 and $1.70 this morning.
Oh, beautiful, Professor. Beautiful each way bet.
All right, and then let's go to race 9, the Queen of the Turf Stakes. It's a Group 1 Gelding for fillies and mares, over 1,600 metres, and it's worth $1 million, so it's a good race. I'm going for the Victorian Gelding, number 7, Cirileo Miss, out of barrier 3. 24 starts, 9 wins and 6 placings. So it's got a 38% win rate, 63% place weight. Gelding, it's won its last 2. It won the Group 3 Matron Stakes at Flemington, and then it followed that up with the Group 2 Sunline Stakes at the Valley. It won the Group 3 Ladies' Day Vars at Caulfield earlier, Gelding, on a heavy 10. So,
Yes.
as I said, what I look for is horses with a chance that have run in very heavy conditions. It can run in the conditions. I am very worried about alcohol-free in this race, Gelding. The only thing I can say, the only bad thing I can say about alcohol-free is in its last 6 starts, it hasn't run on a heavy track. It's only run on good tracks.
Professor, you do make me laugh. Just for the listeners, we had a bit of a discussion off air. Cyril Miss, coming from Warrnambool, has been outstanding in its last 2 runs, Professor. Absolutely slaughtered them. This is where it's toughest test against horses like Fangirl, Levante, Hinged, and Hope in Your Heart. These are all certainly Group 1 horses. But then you have Alcohol Free, which has come over from England after being purchased for 10 million guineas, Professor. Could you imagine Yulong Investments have purchased this horse, and it has form around Bayou, who is regarded as the highest ranked horse in the world. If it maintains that form on a heavy track, Professor, I noticed William Hagger said this horse should be even money, and you're getting round about the $2.70 at the moment. But Cyril Miss, Professor, as you said, you've got good value. It's a mare in form that has been absolutely flying, Professor. And let me tell you, a bit of form came out of yesterday's races at Geelong, Professor. Deny Knowledge ran second to Cyril Miss last start and was beaten by 3 or 4 lengths. It come out and won a $150,000 race at Geelong yesterday by 6 lengths ease down. So that just tells you how well this Cyril Miss is going, Professor.
Yeah, I like Ben Melham in the saddle too, Gelding. 13% win rate over his career, but over his last 50, 26%. So that's a huge increase in greeting the winning post. And we like that. We like the jockeys who can find the winning post, Gelding.
Is he picking up a few rides from Jamie Carr, Professor?
Well, yes, I think he might be.
Be careful with that one, Professor. That can be
that could have double meaning there, Gelding. But anyway, we'll move on.
Well, were you thinking how great a jockey he was on Custodian last start?
Yeah, I was.
What about up to the 200-metre mark?
Well, no, query the ride up to that. It was an S-hit ride to the 200-metre mark, Gelding.
Professor, we heard the yelling at the TV from here, some 40 miles away.
Yeah, I know, Gelding. Simon Wilde, the trainer, Gelding, he's also in career form, 14% over his career, 20% as a trainer over the last 50. So, you know, my thoughts on that, Gelding. Winning form's good form. And so let's stick with that. So my 2 bets for today's races at Royal Randwick: race 2, horse 9, Cool Jakey; race 9, horse 7, Cyril Miss. And let's turn to the Professor's Parlay, Gelding. Unfortunately, Cylinder couldn't do it for us last week.
No, very disappointing. Maybe the heavy track, Professor. What we will say is, of course, when we tipped it, it was racing on a good 4 soft 5 track, Professor, and then ended up being an absolute bog track. So not trying to make excuses, that just wasn't good enough on the day, Professor. So we let you down.
Well, just as well Cylinder didn't get up, Gelding, because the Broncos got up. They got up in nice fashion over West's Tigers. Manly could only get a tie with Newcastle, even after Golden Point. Can you believe that they couldn't find a winner after extra time? And Schooner was just shaking his head over that one.
I thought Manly was a very, very safe bet, Professor. And what can we say about Western Tigers? you could probably be safe backing against them every week.
I think so, Gelding. I think so. All right. So this week's Professor's Parlay. We've gone for the agreed bet of the day, Gelding. Race 8, Horse 1, Animo, who hasn't put a foot wrong as far as the Professor's Parlay is concerned, and also GM Racing. We're getting $2.60 at the moment, so that's putting a little bit of value into the parlay. And let's parlay that into the Brisbane Broncos at home again this Saturday, Gelding, to beat the Canberra Raiders. Brisbane, number 1 on the ladder. They've won 5 from 5. They've got a points differential of plus 75 after 5 games, Gelding. So they're flying. Canberra Raiders, very disappointing season so far. They're 16th, second last. They've only won 1 game from 5, and they've got a points differential of minus 54. So their losing average, Gelding, is by over 11 points a game. So with the Broncos playing at home and getting $1.15 still, Gelding.
That's unbelievable, Professor, isn't it?
Yeah.
Huh?
And let's parlay that into the Melbourne Demons.
And Redcliffe put the form on the board last night.
Oh, yes.
Beating the Cowboys after losing to the Broncos. Sorry, Professor.
No, that's all right, Gelding. And you make a good point because it was played at the home of the North Queensland Cowboys. So Redcliffe Dolphins won away.
Yes. Yeah. So it makes the form good.
Yeah. And we'll parlay that into Melbourne Demons to beat the West Coast Eagles. Melbourne flying at the moment. They had a bit of a hiccup against Brisbane, but I think plenty of teams will have a hiccup against Brisbane in Brisbane, Gelding, as the ladder leaders found out the other night.
A bit of Heckle and Jekyll there, isn't there? Or Jekyll and Hyde with the Brisbane Bears. But, yeah, they're going to be a top 4 side, Professor. But bringing Collingwood and Melbourne up there, but losing when they travel. So
dare we say, Gelding, that Brisbane are lions at home and lambs away?
Oh, Professor. Oh, let's hope that doesn't come back to bite us.
All right. So Melbourne are 4th on the ladder. They've won 2 out of their 3. They've got a healthy percentage of 136.8. West Coast playing at home, but I've discarded that. They're 13th. They've won 1 from 3. But Gelding, they've made 7 changes due to injury, possibly an 8th. Their ruckman, Bailey Williams, might also go out. So that'll be 8 changes from the team that played last week. I don't think any team in the AFL can afford to make 8 changes and still be competitive, Gelding.
I think Melbourne will absolutely, we don't want to get too cocky, Professor, and we won't say it, but this is a game Melbourne should win by at least 10 goals plus.
Yes, Gelding, and the bookies agree because they've got Melbourne at $1.06. So $1.06 in a 2-horse race.
Where else can you get 6%, Professor? On one day.
Oh, Gelding, only you can see the sunny side of that equation. Oh, I love talking to you about these odds. All right.
Well, Professor, as I've said many times, what would you rather? Would you rather $1.06 and have a winning bet? Or would you want a piece of paper back in West Coast at 10-1?
I think I'd prefer the $1.06, Gelding. I'd prefer a return on investment.
Exactly, rather than a loss.
All right, Gelding. The win parlay is showing 3-1. The place parlay showing 3-2. So it'd be nice to get for our $5 bet. It'd be nice to get 15 back, wouldn't it, Gelding?
Not bad at all, Professor. I like it. All
right, Gelding. Well, what we can say to the viewers is have a happy and safe Easter break. And also, because it's Easter, there'll be a special That's Racing on Easter Monday.
Beautiful. We'll be looking at Sandown on Monday, this is normally the Easter meetings at Caulfield, of course, transferred to Sandown. So a bit worried about the track on Monday, Professor, after racing on Saturday in the wet weather, but we'll see how we go.
Well, we'll analyse that. We'll analyse that over the next 48 hours, Gelding.
Certainly will, Professor. Something to do over Easter.
Exactly. All right, Gelding. Well, until Easter Monday, it's good luck.
And good punting.